Welcome, families. Thank you for joining us today for a reopening update, and thank you for submitting your questions. Those questions were used as the basis for this presentation. Throughout the presentation, you will observe red question marks next to a specific item. The question mark indicates a high-frequency question from families. Today, RINEC's administrative team will share key elements within the district's plan for a safe and equitable reentry to school. The plan for reopening our schools is based upon guidance from the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Education Department. Our presentation focuses on 4 major topics: safety and well-being of students and staff, instruction, mental health, and facilities. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to the RINEC planning timeline. On March 18th, the governor closed schools throughout New York State. Approximately 6 weeks later, when it became apparent that schools may be closed for the remainder of the year, district mental health professionals began discussion regarding issues that could affect our student population. Subsequently, data was gathered from families and students around home learning, reopening, and mental health. The timeline on your screen demonstrates the frequency and manner in which information was collected. I also want to draw your attention to the red text, which shows when guidance from the New York State Education Department was first received by schools, July 16th, and also to July 31st, the date that school districts must submit plans to the State Education Department for review. And lastly, to August 7th, the date Governor Cuomo is expected to make an announcement about the reopening of New York schools.
As noted in the timeline on the previous slide, stakeholder input was gathered through a variety of mediums. One way we collected information from families during our reopening process was surveys. We conducted 3, one for feedback regarding home learning in the spring, another about reopening in the fall, and most recently, one related to mental health and physical safety. We pulled several quotes from the survey data that reflect the community's thoughts and questions, which we reviewed as a team and used to inform our planning, being shared here today. You can read some of them on the slide here, or when the presentation is posted on our website. In the first chart, it is evident that a majority of our families are prepared to send their children back to school this fall, 79.4 to be exact. Although this data suggests readiness, the next chart indicates that parents do have some concerns about doing so. However, the third chart demonstrates that based on parent responses, our children do not have the same or as many. There were major takeaways from the 3 surveys, and we'd like to share a few. We noticed that if we did reopen in the fall, there were concerns from our community involving the topics of protocols and procedures for hand washing and sanitizing throughout the day, enhanced cleaning of our facilities by custodial staff, school climates being positive upon return, and how sick students and staff members would be managed if they were identified during the school day. When it came to remote learning, stakeholders were vocal about the need for more teacher-student interactions and using meeting tools to create breakout groups to improve the ability to differentiate instruction.
New York State has taken a slow but deliberate approach to their crisis response. From the 2-week-at-a-time pace set by the governor to keep schools closed in the spring to the release of the official New York State guidance on July 16th, we have had to be patient. We did know that our directive was to create 3 plans for the reopening of our schools. One was for a full reopen with all students returning to the buildings. One was a full remote with no students returning to the buildings. And the third was for a hybrid of the 2. Based on the New York State guidance document, bringing students into the buildings will require social distancing, usually meaning 6 feet between bodies. Because of the size of our facilities, that means if the governor says school buildings can reopen, we would have to use our hybrid plan and accommodate 50% of our students at a time. All New York districts must have their plans submitted to the state and posted publicly by July 31st. And as Dr. Ferraro said, we expect the governor to tell us in or out by August 7th.
Safety for all students and staff is paramount. We will adhere to CDC and Department of Health guidance for personal protective equipment, especially face coverings and social distancing. With regard to face coverings and masks, when will masks be required? All staff, kindergarten through 12th grade, are required to wear masks. All students, grades 6 through 12, in classrooms. Elementary students will wear masks in classrooms when distancing is not feasible. When there's less than 6 feet between two people, in hallways and restrooms, and in other congregate settings. There will be mask breaks provided throughout the day for all students. As indicated by the red question mark, as Dr. Ferraro referenced earlier, it was a frequent question regarding social distancing. Principals and custodial staff have been working cooperatively and diligently to map out spaces in classrooms to ensure that social distancing is taking place. Classrooms in larger spaces will be arranged with 6 feet of space between students. Desks and tables used in dining halls will face in one direction. Use of signage reinforcing social distancing anywhere students walk or line up will be posted and followed. Hallways and stairwells may be designated as one-way traffic patterns. Lockers will not be used across the buildings. A 12-foot distance implemented for aerobic activities, such as heavy breathing that may take place in physical education class, the playing of wind instruments, or singing, will be ensured. Students will not be required to wear masks during physical education and recess when properly socially distanced. Drop-off and pickup locations and schedules will vary by building and be designed to minimize clustering of students and vehicle traffic. Health screenings will also be a part of the reentry plan. It's a two-step process. First, there'll be a web-based health assessment that each student and staff member will complete prior to arriving to school. That can be completed on home computer or personal smart devices. The second part will be a non-contact temporal scan of forehead at school entrances. Staff members, students, and/or parents or guardians of students are required to notify the school if they develop symptoms or if their answers to the health assessment has changed. All building visitors will also be subject to the screening process. They will not be allowed in the building unless there is an emergency, and parents or guardians who deliver any necessary items, they will do so at a designated area at each building. It's important to note and reinforce that our sickness protocol will adhere to all CDC and Department of Health guidance. During the school day, students and staff exhibiting signs of COVID-19 will be sent to the nurse's office for further assessment. Designated holding areas will be designated in each building to isolate symptomatic individuals until pickup and departure is arranged. Areas used by individuals suspected of COVID-19 infection will be closed off and appropriately disinfected and cleaned and will not be used again until that is completed. Symptomatic individuals or those with a confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19 must satisfy all CDC and Department of Health return to school guidelines.
A key aspect of our plans to reopen are the ways we'll maintain a clean and healthy environment in which students can learn and staff can work. There are many changes that will reflect our efforts to provide safe spaces. The physical plants and properties have been assessed, and that information has been incorporated into our plans. Obviously, windows will be used to the greatest extent for ventilation. Our HVAC system, which utilizes fresh air from outside, uses the proper MERV filters and will be set in daytime mode around the clock to continuously purge the interior air. Students and staff will be encouraged to take advantage of outdoor passing routes and space for lessons. We have had suggestions for tents, and we are looking into that, although there are numerous state safety standards that must be met before tents can be used for instruction. I'm going to show you a brief video to highlight one of our new tools. Our custodial staff will be busier than ever before. We're going to be cleaning our high-touch areas and items in classrooms and common areas on a more frequent basis. We're also going to be using more powerful cleaning tools. Although Rhinebeck has had a long commitment to be green and environmentally friendly, we have made the transition to stronger disinfectants than the EPA, that are EPA approved, but also recommended to combat this virus. The video you're showing shows a contrast between traditional methods of cleaning, spray and wipe, with our new e-mist electrostatic sprayers, which takes the disinfectant, charges the particles, and that when they spray, those particles cling to whatever surface. And you'll see in this video, using the color contrast, the difference in coverage. This will greatly enhance the effectiveness of our custodial cleaning. Faster and more effective. Everything that we do will be logged so that there will be a full record of all cleaning for, again, health and safety.
So I'd like to start with an update regarding our food service and meals program. First, our planning has included the health guidance related to social distancing and other safety measures that Mr. Seglia shared. We have designated our cafeterias where students will face the same direction and be spaced with 6 feet of distancing. Hand hygiene, such as hand washing and sanitizer, has been built into the scheduling. So to help imagine what this might look like, you can picture increased table spacing, seat spots marked, signage on the floors for flow of traffic, cleaning between lunch periods, and students putting on their masks when distancing isn't possible during cleanup and transition. For our youngest learners in kindergarten, they will eat lunch in their classrooms, where these safety measures are already built into the familiar room environment, and bathrooms are located in their classrooms. We will be offering a grab-and-go concept for students requiring school meals. This means that prepared meals will be ready for students to easily and safely and quickly take. We are encouraging students to bring lunch from home when possible to support our procedures. And for recess, certainly in K-5, but I suspect across all of our schools, students love recess, time with their peers to socialize and have that much needed movement in their day. We plan to have our playgrounds open with proper safeguards. We're fortunate we have school grounds that include our fields, play structures, and blacktop areas. When distancing is feasible, recess is a mask break. We look to continue our partnership with our PTSA-funded RIY coaches at DW and FEB, who will facilitate games with distancing in mind. We are currently researching outside stations for hand washing to support our protocols of before and after recess.
Next, we shift our discussion to instruction and schedules. As Dr. Latinsky mentioned, hybrid models blend traditional in-person instruction with e-learning at home. The models vary in their rotation of students and in-person instructional days. Some models rotate in-person instructional days daily, every few days, weekly, or even longer. Regardless of the rotation, hybrid models allow schools to balance the need to provide in-person instruction safely while social distancing. They can also assist in containment and mitigation efforts if needed. Our model takes into account input from parents, students, and teachers. It splits students into 2 cohorts, with siblings across all buildings assigned to the same cohort. Please note that that was a frequently asked question. If you look at the calendar, you will notice each day has been designated using Rhinebeck colors as blue or black. On blue days, Cohort 1 will receive in-person instruction, while Cohort 2 participates in e-learning at home. Please note that Cohort 1 reports to school on Mondays and Wednesdays. On black days, Cohort 2 will receive in-person instruction, while Cohort 1 participates in e-learning at home. Cohort 2 reports to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. To maximize in-person instruction, Fridays will first be used during abbreviated weeks to make up the lost instructional day for the cohort who was supposed to come to school on the day we were closed. For example, school is closed on Monday, Labor Day, September 7th. This means that cohort 1 missed a day of in-person instruction and will make up the lost day of instruction on Friday, September 11th. For cohort 1, the same holds true for Yom Kippur on Monday, September 28th, Columbus Day on Monday, October 12th, and Veterans Day on November 11th. This happens to cohort 2 on Superintendent's Conference Day, which is the red box at the bottom of the screen, on Tuesday, November 3rd. They will receive in-person instruction that Friday on November 6th. On full weeks, the Fridays will alternate between the two cohorts. Please note the first 2 full weeks occur during the week of September 13th and 20th. You will notice that cohort 1 is assigned in-person instruction on Friday for the first week, while cohort 2 is assigned in-person instruction the following week. This pattern continues on the remaining full weeks of the first quarter, the weeks of October 4th, 20th, and 27th. This rotation will allow for greater continuity of instruction, accountability, and timely feedback. In-person instruction will look as it normally does, just in smaller groups. On e-learning days at home, students may be asked to apply knowledge from the previous day by completing a task such as a writing assignment, lab analyses, practice problems, or even watch a Screencastify video. This next middle school, high school calendar assigns letter days to the blue and black days. Note that we've manipulated our letter calendar to allow each cohort to have in-person instruction days on ACE and BDF days. This was needed in the middle school and high school to make certain that each cohort sees their elective teachers in person for instructional days. The days look like they go out of order if you look at the calendar as a whole, so I will ask you to follow along with one color. Cohort 1 has orientation on their first day of school, Wednesday, September 9th. You will notice that they go through the 6 letter days in order each time they are in person in school for in-person instruction. So that would be on the 9th, the 11th, the 14th, the 16th, the 18th, and so on. The same is true if you follow along for cohort 2, beginning with their orientation on September 8th. Mrs. Goldberg will explain how this works in the elementary schools.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Like the middle school and high school, the elementary schools will follow the same exact schedule. Here, you'll see a schedule for the month of September. Again, the cohorts and letter days align in all of our buildings. We knew the importance of consistency, both for our shared staff and families with children in different buildings. Each principal plans to provide you with your child's cohort and placement assignment earlier than we historically have. We understand this year more than ever the importance for your planning. At DW and FEB, the letter days align to our specialty schedules. So for example, if your child has music on a B day, you'll be able to know when that will take place. In this model, both cohorts receive in-person instruction for our specials such as PE, music, art, library, media center. The teachers will share the specialty schedule for their class with you when school begins. In addition, we'll be sure calendars are on our website and our newsletters and even posted outside of our school building. And when in doubt, just be sure your child wears their sneakers in case they have PE that day. Our schedule preserves our back to school rituals. So as you can see, looking at those first 2 days on the 8th and 9th, 1st and 5th graders will have orientation for a half day. Our kindergarten families will participate in a welcome tour of their child's classroom on the orientation days. And like Dr. Wilson shared, we start our full day schedule on September 10th for cohort 2. With this model, we have the ability to teach in person consistently for all of our students. And this model allows teachers to cover those big concepts in person and have lessons prepared that keeps the pacing and sequencing of instruction intact. So this means for our students being able to bring their independent reading books back and forth, keeping a steady supply of high interest and just right text in their hands. Or student assignments returned to school for greater feedback. There's a continuity of instruction which supports monitoring and accountability of student learning. If we go into the next slide for technology. As we were making preparations to support the various models of school reopening, we invested in technology that further leverages our instruction, learning, and communication. Our one-to-one Chromebook initiative for students in grades 3 to 12 supports the continuity of learning at home and school and provides equitable access to a computing device. K-2 students have devices available at school and, if needed, can be borrowed for remote learning. Software and online resources have been researched and purchased that allows us to provide instruction for any of the reopening models that may be needed. We have introduced Google Classroom for all grades now starting in kindergarten, where lessons will be organized for remote learning. Digital workspaces such as Annotate and Screencastify have been purchased, and in addition, online programs such as Dreambox, iReady, and RazKids, to name a few, where we've increased resources for teachers and students. Professional development has been built into our planning to support teachers and support families.
We've reflected upon our own observations from this past school year, as well as the input from teachers, parents, and students to plan for any e-learning that takes place, whether we are open in a hybrid or remote scenario. We're still working out the remote learning plan details, but rest assured there will be more consistent and live interaction with teachers. At first glance, you might think that we will only cover half the material. This is certainly not the case. Teachers will build upon their work that took place at the end of the school year and, of course, over the summer to identify which topics are best taught in person and those that students have historically had an easier time understanding. As a result, more planning time is required. Building schedules will vary, but will account for the additional planning time that is required to make certain that big ideas are covered. This bell schedule will be used regardless of whether we are in a remote or hybrid situation. Remote learning will be used if Governor Cuomo decides that schools cannot reopen in person or if our region does not meet the governor's data thresholds and schools are required to close.
We have been asked about remote learning and homeschooling if parents do not want to send their children to school. There are currently no provisions in the state guidance about trying to run a full remote program simultaneously with a hybrid program. New York does, however, have a process in which students who live in the district may be homeschooled. Homeschooling is a fairly structured and regulated process, but any parent wishing to explore that route should consult their building principal.
In the recent New York State education document and the Department of Health guidance, it was strongly suggested that school districts prioritize certain high-need students whenever possible. The first was for students with disabilities. At Rhinebeck, we have determined it is important to provide daily in-person special education instruction services, related services, and accommodations for students who require special class placement for their academic instruction. Students who are placed in special class full-time are the highest need students on the continuum of services. The second group of students would be entering and emerging English language learners. They will be provided the required instructional units of study based on their English language proficiency level. They will receive this in school, and on the opposite days at home, we'll have the ENL teacher live to complete these requirements of study. One additional point I want to make is we learned much during our in-person extended school year program for eligible middle and high school students with disabilities. We did health checks and screenings, social distancing, wearing of masks by staff and students, and cleaning. All these were enforced and were very successful. So this really was good preparation for our September opening, adhering to public health requirements.
This continues to be a stressful time for families, and we've appreciated hearing from you. We also want to thank our PTSA health and wellness representatives from each school who are helping us to guide more closely toward the needs of our families. Your children will return to a calm, clean, and welcoming school environment. This is an opportunity for all of us to come together as a community to practice civic participation and consideration for others. Children can feel empowered with the knowledge that by following health guidelines, they can make a difference in their most important community outside of home. We plan to take a positive approach to reintegrating students while remaining vigilant for signs of stress, anxiety, and adjustment challenges. As you saw, our community data suggests that it is the parents who are most anxious. The children look to adults to model coping behaviors and to teach them what to do. The adults need to keep cool heads and help us to reinforce stability and continuity by normalizing health practices and by using the staff, programs, and resources available from our school counselors, psychologists, administrators, and teachers. There are also community resources available, and if you need them, please ask us. We already have robust, multi-layered social emotional learning programs, all of which are outlined on our district website. We plan to continue these programs and add additional resources as needed. Our school safety plan includes a mental health emergency response team composed of school counselors, psychologists, and nurses, and they will be visible, proactive, and responsive. Additionally, we have formed a health and wellness subcommittee. Our initial 2 meetings in April and May concerned ongoing management during school closure. In June, we immediately pivoted to the future and invited PTSA Health and Wellness Committee members to join us as we look toward the fall. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 19th, and at that time, we hope to have an idea about what may come next. Whatever that may be, we are ready. The future of education points to engaging students as self-directed collaborators who are adept at analytic problem solving. To accomplish this throughout our district, we use the school-wide enrichment model, or SEM, to develop talent in project-based opportunities that help students identify their strengths and interests. Rhinex enrichment programming is fully integrated into the fabric of our classrooms. While home learning is not ideal and not our choice, we plan to use this opportunity to expand our push to prepare students for a future in which people will often participate in flexible work groups to share expertise across disciplines. What does this look like? Well, as a result of our long-term commitment to strong enrichment programs, during school closure, our high school student participation in enrichment actually grew. 60 students joined a live video meeting to read Shakespeare in Love. Students migrated a TEDx conference online. They performed a variety of community service, and they created a district-wide program called RN Inspires that expanded K-12 as a platform for students to share learning with each other. In the fall, we will launch an enrichment web resource that is intended to engage students and provide them with ideas for real-world investigations in the community around them. These are the kinds of future-forward opportunities we want for all of our students, and you will see much more of it in the coming year.
Grading. When we left in March, we realized we needed to look at our grading policy to allow for the newness of remote learning. At the elementary and secondary levels, we came up with grading systems that we thought would support accountability, yet allow for flexibility. Now that remote learning has become more the norm, we plan on returning to the grading policies we had in place prior to March 13th. Attendance. Reporting attendance to the state is a mandatory requirement. In March, we created an attendance link for parents to complete daily. But after your input midway through the closure, we changed that process to weekly. For this coming school year, we will develop yet another mechanism to collect and report attendance when students are not participating in in-person instruction.
School assemblies and after-school extracurricular activities are suspended. As the school year progresses, we'll investigate what opportunities may be able to take place and in what capacity to make sure we're complying with all guidelines. There's a delayed start of the fall interscholastic athletic season for our modified JV and varsity athletes. It has been delayed to September 21st per New York State Public High School Athletic Association. If and when we're able to resume, it will be in accordance with all state and local requirements associated with COVID-19 that will be set forth by New York State Public High School Athletic Association, as well as Section 1 athletics.
All of our safety procedures will be in place for either a hybrid or a full return. Additionally, standard security assignments for personnel on supervision duty will be modified to account for students moving around outside. We'll still be required to perform all safety drills, including evacuation and sheltering. Most drills will remain unchanged, other than social distancing in assembly areas, such as when we line up outside during a fire drill. Or, instead of clustering in the corner of a room for a lockdown, students would be verbally told what to do. Of course, in a real emergency, a speedy evacuation or an effective hiding place would mean we prioritize the greater threat. We are also adding more exterior speakers so that everyone will be able to hear emergency announcements if they're learning outside. In the near future, we will continue to use our Blackboard Connect system and send email to the school community. We will also be adding a reopening tab to our district webpage for easier parent access to information. Families will receive information specific to each school building, including cohort assignments and bell schedules. Since we will need to fine-tune details for all kinds of procedures to make our plan successful, we will continue to enlist support from our stakeholder groups between now and opening day. Input from our PTSA, the PACs, the Rhinebeck Teachers Association, Student Senate, and medical professionals like our district doctor, and a host of other individuals will be instrumental in giving our students a quality education regardless of the circumstances. This is a collective effort that demands energy, attention to detail, and creativity. We are grateful for the way our Rhinebeck community has supported our efforts to deal with this crisis so far. With further support, plus a lot of flexibility and patience, we look forward to getting back to school. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for submitting your questions. I hope that your questions were answered. Today's presentation was meant to give families a general overview of our district's reopening plan. Over the next few weeks, we will be fine-tuning elements of the plan and sharing more specific details with families. For your convenience, a tab entitled Reopening is posted on the homepage of the district website. This tab will continue to be populated with the most current information available. Additionally, next week, I will be sending families an FAQ, which will also include any changes that are coming from the State Education Department, the Governor's Office, or the Department of Health. These are difficult times for everyone, and please remember that Rhinebeck is here to help. Do not hesitate to contact any of us with your questions or concerns. Once again, I thank you for your partnership, patience, and flexibility. Working together, we will ensure a safe return to school for all students and staff.